had enough, you know. I mean, we were like reincarnated spirits of WWII, which is one of the most horrible, terrible terrors ever unleashed in a gazillion years here in this reality, man. That was one of the worst things we ever undertook on either side of the fence. There was no side. Somebody was playing us big time, man, and we know it. And we knew it then, and we know it now, see. So there, you know, forgive me for my passion, but there was a rallying call. See, I'm reliving it as I'm talking about it. But there's a rallying call there, you know. Get your butt down to Chicago. We're not going to take this shit lying down. LBJ, you're going down, and we're not coming out of this town until this war is over, man, you know. And that we were just going to love them right out of it. We had peace, love, marijuana, and rock and roll. Mary Jane in our heart and soul, which means we had the softer side of life. We had a broader vision than our parents ever dreamed of. Well, they had that dream somewhere, but it got squunched real bad, you know, and they just fell into the square-headed reality and, you know, went down. And if they could get a 57 Chevy, baby, they were top of the heap, house in the burbs in a 57 Chev, and, you know, a good-looking babe on the side, a good-looking mama to raise your kids, you know, etc. You know, a bunch of beer heads, too, football fanatics, etc. And just little, oh, whatever the authorities tell me, I'm going to go for, because that's the government, that's the church, that's the town council, etc. Whatever it was, you know, the Society of Chiefs, whatever. But it was square-headed and just as Nazified as you could be, you know. That's why we recognize the rise of Nazism and the reality of 2017, eh? But babies, back then we were just frustrated, and we were not going to take it as a generation. Now, I, for one, did not go to Chicago and get my head beat in by the brutality of the police persons back there who hated hippies with a passion, man, you know. We were undermining their whole authoritarian structure, the thing that gave them all that power out there on the streets, the life and death and all that shit, you know. They were going to make sure we suffered the torments of their kind of hell, you know, and they applied it to our brothers and sisters pretty severely. It was almost a war on the streets there in Chicago during that democratic convention in '68, you know, and LBJ went down, baby. Ultimately, the war was over, but it took a few more years and a hell of a lot of heartache and hardship, you know. But babies, you know, we hippies didn't give up back in those days, and I call myself a hippie very loosely because I was also surrendered into the business world at a very young age, man, you know. So I was trying to walk between the worlds there, man, and apply the principles, you know, that I could where I could, you know, give some heart to the business world, I thought, you know. And in a way I did, and in a way I succeeded, but in a way, I failed miserably, too, you know, because, you know, every attempt would backfire on me, and it would be years later before the corporations would start to embrace such things. In fact, they still kind of lack that, don't they, for the most part. But I'll tell you what, there's a little time bomb waiting to go off, and it comes from back about 1968, 69 was divine. I tell you, it was a big change. It was hard to go through, let me tell you. Because we really had to buck everything we'd been conditioned into and educated up in from our families, from the culture, from the schools and the governmental authoritarian D-heads and all that stuff, you know. Everybody thought it was normal to have some kind of authoritarian D-head, like a dictator, in the land of the free, home of the slave, eh? You know, as a head of a school or, you know, a business, you know, that was like, you know, and the meaner they were, well, the more prosperous they could be, you know. They just had to be kind of heartless, let the money dictate the situation. What's in it for me? What's the P&L look like? You know, etc. How much vig do I have to give here to get in on this one, etc. You know what I mean? It's like, wow, you know. There's a world of hustlers and schemers and wild little dreamers with innocent hearts that get sucked dry and then tossed out like so much dirty laundry. You know what I mean? You don't want to wash it anymore. You're just tired of it. It's done. Throw it away. You know, I mean, that's sad, 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 sad. I mean, you wonder where war comes from? That kind of attitude right there. You know, as if you're better in some way than everybody else, and as if you matter somehow a little more than others because you got more vig, man. You got the scheme, you got the hustle, you got the charm, baby. People, you know how to disarm people and get your way and stuff, you know. Big old bully SOB. Your mama weeps big tears, you know. Big tears, man, I'm telling you. But she'll let you be what you want to be here in the 3D because you learn your lesson one way or the other, you know. And you think you're really getting away with something, then you realize it's not you. You can't even enjoy it because it's empty when you get it because you're taking it from others. You're doing it at the expense of others. It's the exact opposite, the exact square opposite of the way people ought to be living, of the way we're designed to be living. See, now this is a very, very declined world in a very, very shadowy, declined existence. Some people say it has the shades of hell to it. Well, baby, places like Chicago to this day still do. And there's still warfare on the streets there. And life can be taken very casually. It's not a good scene. It never has been. You see, it's always been this harsh edge, this heartless thing. Like, you don't count, you know. How can people be so isolated as all that? Live in a great big old commune like Chicago, man. Shit. When are the hippies finally going to take over there? I mean, come on, guys. I know it's happening a little bit here and a little bit there anyway. Even the mafia's starting to be entertained by the hippies, man. You know, I think we're going to bring them all around. I think Chicago might be that kind of town that changes it all around. Because it's certainly been one of the most severe. I mean, the harshest. I think it's a lot meaner in New York City, and that's mean too. But, you know, there's cool people everywhere. That's who holds the light. That's who holds the love in those spaces. Whether they're known or unknown, and generally they're mostly just obscure little people living quiet little lives that are so damn expansive you wouldn't believe it. You know, they go down the street having mental orgasms that life is just so joyful to them, you know. Yet on the outer demeanor, they're just like any other New Yorker. Don't look at me, you some bitch. Crazy world, eh? Boy, we can design it that way, but see the reality. This is like the stuff that goes on under the ground in big cities, keeps the sewer going away and the water coming around and the lights and the thunder and all the good shit in life, you know. Oh, that substructure. Well, there's been a substructure of love at work in this city alive, man. And boy, it's a hell of a lot more alive than New York City ever dreamed of being. In fact, you know, did you realize that New York City is a dream? It really don't exist there. I mean, it's just somebody's idea of what that aspect of particular hell and paradise ought to be, you know, in the world of duality, you know, just kind of morphed out of some warped idea that, you know, the invaders from Europe could trash the land and do what they wanted with it, okay? You know, superior dominance. Again, that heartless attitude. Natives are savages. They're less than animals, you know. I mean, goodness, golly, you know, if our ancestors, and I apologize for the ancestors, you know, but if our ancestors could have, like, made peace and learned from their benefactors and kind of melded in a bit here and a bit there and, you know, I mean, did it in a respectful way instead of, you know, invading with force. If we'd let our heart come forward, if those early pilgrims had been real pilgrims, which they were carrying an energy for everybody. It's what brings, they were the hippies of their day, as weird as that might seem, but they were. They were the conscious rebels. I mean, and that was about as much as you could achieve in their day, as far as consciousness goes. See, people don't realize how blessed we are to be alive right now in 2017, you know. I'm telling you, you know, the hippie thing looks beautiful, peace, love, marijuana, free love, free love, free love, you know, and it was wild and woolly and beautiful in its wild woolliness, too. But it was also some of the most difficult times of any life ever lived. You can't believe the pressure, the severity of the darkness then, you know, and we didn't know better but just to rebel against it and try to use the love to dissuade it from its bad habits, to give the business people a little heart. That's why I was there when I was a kid, 18, 19 years old, trying to straddle the world, and I was in business management, I had some good positions back then, I was playing with life. I mean, I was starting to realize that I could have anything here I wanted, but what was it that I really wanted? I had that dream in my heart, the same thing as all of us hippie children did. Maybe in my own little version of it, we all do. We all see it aspectually, yet it's a uniformly held dream. Everyone carries it, especially the hippies of my generation. See, it took a lot. I mean, there were loggers in Montana that would catch a boy with long hair hitchhiking or something. They'd disappear in the woods and cut his hair with a chainsaw. I mean, stuff like that went on. There was a lot of... It was a war, man, The energy of war was all around us, and we didn't know but to resist it in that way. But we had our love-ins and our peace-ins and our sit-ins, take over administrative buildings and so forth. Man, I backed it and supported it to the point where, some of the English intelligence, I think, was following me around and tapping my phone. And, just because I'd written some articles for a newspaper or two, that advocated more of a hippie and a communal type view. I see now myself, back then I used to call myself a communist just for fun. I just to shake people up, because I really didn't know what that meant. But, I got the Little Red Book, and I read that, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, I buffed up on it and realized I wasn't a communist, because that was just what we were living under already. The dictatorial kind, I mean. I was more of a communalist, And that's always been the dream I've held, is like humanity gathered together in these tribes, kind of like what we are now in communities and towns and cities and along the rivers and mountains and so forth, but not exactly the same. You see, the dream, and I didn't realize, when I was a kid, that the dream I held and that I so hated the reality around me for not holding and not being, that I didn't realize that dream is the reality. We just have a shadowy memory of it when we come in here and have to unload most of our conscious presence and just take it on the run, baby. Well, gee whiz, I tell you, I don't know what else to do here. But oh my goodness, hang on a sec, my mic just fell. There, I got a new little mic to back up for the other mic on. Well, anyway, it's complicated, but one of them just fell down here, and it brought me around here. So, but it's okay. It's working right now, and it'll be there for a while. And when I get done with this little rap, I can fix it up a little more while you're doing the medicine of rock and roll. Did I give you a good warm-up this morning or what, man? I being I, myself, my little doggy, who is myself too, Mr. Obi-Wan Kenobi, a yogi dog, who, by the way, performed nobly yesterday at our opening ceremonies at Joyful Journey Hot Springs. I was so pleased with him, He just a rocking little dog, man. It just, I kind of like him. I don't like being apart from him. Sometimes I have to leave him in the car while I go soak or something, They don't want dogs out there by the pools for obvious reasons. So anywho, he has to wait in the car, and I always make sure he's shady and well taken care of, got water and all that, And he just throws fits out there. I have to be real careful where I park. He's got some separation anxiety going on. So you guys, send a little good vibe our way. Let's help our little co-pilot understand the old man ain't never going to leave him and not come back. Not ever, man. Wherever we go, we walk together, little man. We do, He gets to break the trail most of the time, Of course, he's just looking for signals and smoke signals from his buddies out there. You know what I mean, Jelly Bean. He loves getting out and partying down with the new dogs every now and then, but you have to be really careful about that too, because not every dog has such a delightful disposition as he does, See, and that's the way we've had to live too, because we had this delightful disposition. We had this dream we were trying to bring into a reality as a whole generation back there in the 60s, when the levee breaks. Indeed, and it broke, I'm telling you, and this became a movement to this day. that despite all the suffering it's created, it's being self-rectifying. But that's why the governmental dudes and dudettes are trying to put the hammer down, because they see what's coming around, and that means the end, which is the beginning. See, they just don't quite get it. That everything they ever sought, all this power, all this wealth and shit, well, you already got it, man. Remember the dream that we're all born with, you see? But you have to give up this isolated personality, this thing that feels unfulfilled, that can only be fulfilled in heartless and warped ways, that has to put its heart away day after day after day, moment to moment. Pretend you have one at the same time, but it's just the whole thing is a pretense. Even what you're suffering and causing suffering in others in pursuit of, the big old doulars or whatever they are. You notice how that age is coming to an end? Thank goodness, see? That tidal wave we started back then, in great peril to ourselves as a generation and as persons in that generation, took hold somehow. And even though I watched my hippie brothers and sisters, sell out as the 80s came around, and they started getting little businesses going, these little organic businesses, one sort or another. Next thing you know, they were divorcing the old lady and fighting over the mansion on the hill and the kids and all that stuff. They'd all become Republicans, Gee whiz, I tell you, it's like, wow, man, what happened to that? But see, I know. And I knew then and I know now. See, that was just the old conditioning catching up to us, And not everyone, but everyone in their own way did surrender to it. I mean, there were a lot of holdouts, and thank goodness for them, Like myself. I mean, not that I, did anything stunning or stellar, but I would limit my selling outedness, And I'd always try to be the bright blossom of love wherever I happened to be, even if I had to be ornery to be it. But usually it was like party wherever I happened to be. Still is in some ways, But babies, like this little rock and roll medicine show we have here on the Hazy Radio Network that we call Spring Crick, don't you know? Your moment of truth from a little sound booth aboard the spaceship Love here at 9,000 feet high in the Rocky Mountain sky, through the heart of this guy, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and his old man, too, which happens to be me, Grandpaw Koyote, don't you see? Grandfather of the Coyotes, grandfather in the Coyotes. That's what it is. Not of, but in. Well, because I am in, I'm of, too, you see, just like we are in humanity. It's an energy I carry. The comedy that takes us beyond the 3D, the ability to see that comedy even in treachery, to know the true nobility of the human heart and its service to itself throughout the ages and generations of humanity. Even though our times seem a little more dynamic than our parents' times and so forth, she whiz, every generation has gone through phenomenal change, even though the same system's been in place for quite a while now, a few thousand years now. And it's a very diminished state of being to live in economic societies where trade determines your ability to live or not live, and your ability to produce substance that you can trade, etc., And not everybody comes equipped for that. In fact, hardly anybody does. So they have to be conditioned into it. So that's given rise to a very dark energy that likes to assault children and recondition their tiny little hearts, put them away, and make sure they're programmable for the rest and forever, wouldn't you say? You see, and that's just doesn't be the way we want to be. But we had to go through this in order to remember what heartlessness could be, because we didn't even know. See, we'd never lived in such a state before. That's why we had to create this tragicomedy we call 3D. We had to invent that. We had to have a safe space, quote, quote, a playpen for the baby children, so we could get into this skin and learn how to live again, to start from ground zero, go back to the primal moment, and rearrange ourselves in a feeling way with the liquidity of the organic nature around us. So we became a combination of all the elements of reality, born into it through that emotion we call the mother love, which is the urge to create. And it's irresistible. When it rises, its beauty full wonder from inside of your heart. It's just irresistible, completely. And that's what we've proven to ourselves here in this 3D, and that's why you're seeing hearts that have been torn asunder, ripped to shred, coming back together in days like this. That many of the innocent children of the previous generations that have been programmed to be these thoughtless robotrons, especially in the business world or the governmental empires and so forth. It's all the same thing, really. I watched in my lifetime as the illusion of separation of this power dissolved away, especially in the last 17 years or so. It's been accelerated, but things have to come to a head before we can move ahead, see? That's how it goes here in the 3D, but this is also the secret to motivating ourselves beyond it. Because, you know, for one, this is the coyote medicine through and through. For one, we have to get it done before they do. You understand what I mean? We have to be of such an influence, in other words, that we forestall the mass destruction that some have been trying to create here. It's not a they and us thing, but it has been divided in that way. You see, but the more we realize the unity of ourself in our own presence, the more we see that manifest in the reality around us. And the most heartless of beings, I like to pick on old cherubic Dick Cheney, because he comes from out west like I do, but he put his heart away so long ago he forgot he had one, you know. And I've seen like that heartless dude who I kind of hold up as the epitome of evil, but shit, he's just a little puppet player too. He's a nobody, just like we are, you know. And there isn't anybody really other than the one person in us all. And she so loves these little persons that we've become that she is replicating herself in this full presence of person now. You needed to feel what the absence of mother was, what it was like to step out of the reality and find yourself lost. And then found. Then brought around, nurtured by a love you couldn't even see, but you could sure be. And then you began to see this love beyond the material nature. It's what creates the materiality and what feels itself resonating in that materiality, which brings forward then the harmony of life. The symphony of love is like a blossoming field of flowers where every color, and there's every shade you could ever imagine, just blends together perfectly. And you look at it and you see all the colors from afar, you see all the colors of the rainbow exuberantly painted on that field. Yeah, it looks like it's artistry, all right. It's the art of life. It's the art of living from your heart, see. That's the lesson of the 3D. The further you get from it, the more you feel the call home. I don't care how numb you've made yourself or others have made you in service to quote them too. See, we've all been enslaved by something, all of us. Because that's the normal state of being in the 3D. It's like, exact opposite of what reality is. Reality is free. Love is so pure in that reality that there's no such thing as trust or belief or faith. Those things are illusionary things. Love is real, and when it creates, it lives in the reality of its creation, and that's what it feels, and that's what it flows with. And that's what brings forward this harmony and perfect synchronicity all across creation. And every little thing fits in its own little niche and makes its own little sound. The song of the heart coming around. It's the grandest performance and production of a rock opera there could ever be. I tell you what, don't you see? As good as they get here, too. They've been pretty good. Even here in the dead old 3D, man, there's been a lot of life here. But see, that's what the hippie generation created. A whole bunch of new music and a new style of doing it, that just deepened and broadened as it went along. And then, of course, in the 80s, it started being influenced by the money again. The heart was starting to go out of it. But, baby, it's still rock and roll to me all the way through. The heart, in other words, just like my hippie generation, my heart never gave up. And as my generation now begins to hit the rest homes and so forth, it's going to be a party on at our place. I'll tell you that. These kids know how to rock. They know how to roll. And, you know, if they got to die in some old rest home, baby, they're going to go down in style, you know. You'll hear some Led Zeppelin kind of music coming out of them places, man. In fact, you know, they'll have concerts bigger than, you know, and everybody will be in a wheelchair, man. You know? But rocking down just the same. That's if we stayed in the same desperate ways that we are now. Do you think we're going to? Most of us sense a rather large change coming, don't we, you see? That's why it's important you get over here out of the 3D, have a little sip on Spring Crick along with me, and let's make some medicine here, some rock and roll, some multi-dimensional medicine for all the heart and soul out there that needs to be influenced in this way. Wake up, kiddies, when you say, it's your day, it's your time. Yesterday turned it around, man. Today is now going back the other way. So, you know, the upside down becomes the right side up. Get ready, man, you know, and if you can't get ready, well, fear it until it takes you by the heart. Says, okay, knock it off. Quit being so hard on yourself and everybody else. Get over here and party with it. Come on out and play. It's what I always wanted to do everywhere I went. And I did do it quite often, but not everybody responded favorably, okay? But most of the folks did. We always had a good time, you know. That's the one thing I determined in my life too early on, you know. No matter what I was doing, if I wasn't having a good time doing it, baby, I was going to change, you know. And I did. I wouldn't put up with nonsense in my life when the imperialism started to creep in and try to take over, and the dictatorial attitudes would come forward and so forth, and you found you weren't able to work with people anymore. Goodbye, Charlie, man. I can work with somebody else down the road better than you anyway, you know. Some new opportunity had come your way. A lot of times they're just waiting there for you to get done with whatever you've been involved in, you know. The minute it becomes unfun, that's when you're undone and start to make your way out of there, you know. Well, you know, in this living reality, that's kind of what we're doing now, too. We've held, believe it or not, we've held this attitude through the generations, you see. That's why we're still alive here in the 3D. You know, something's kept us going. That understructure, remember, see? It can be kind of slimy and creepy down there now, can it? You betcha, baby. Ooh. Most folks don't even know it exists and don't want to know it exists because it's right there living beneath them, man, ready to swallow up the whole city like a great big old gigantic, you know, destructive, hateful octopus, man. It's just getting huge, man, and huger and huger and huger. One day the city just dissolves into its own slime pit. Well, that would be the ultimate fate of our cities, of course. They wouldn't last much longer anyway. But it's best we just fade them out and rearrange them a little bit, wouldn't you say? You know, get back to the old tribal ways of being, you know, where certain vibes draw you together with certain tribes, and that draws you together with all the other tribes, and the international coalition of life has risen itself up, and all the peoples of this entire humanity are joined together like the cells and atoms inside of a human body. They just naturally take form. Everybody resonates with a certain presence. We naturally gather with that of a similar resonation, you know. We're all different players in the orchestra of life, and every little tone is of extreme importance here, every one of them, you know. That's why we try to get you rocking and rolling so early in the day, babies, because it's time to fire up, wouldn't you say? Yeah, go hug on your Mary J, okay? Let her help you along the way, because she emulates and is the sweet love that brings us forward, okay? Rock on, baby. You got Grandpa Koyote, Obi-Wan Kenobi, some grandchildren. Oh, baby, that's you. Oh, and you. Yeah, and everyone too, baby. I'm my own grandpa. Isn't that crazy? And I'm my own grandchild. Well, I'll let Roger Miller explain that to you sometime. Right now, but too early in the day.